Namaste, witchlings. Welcome back to Die the Yoga Witch podcast. As the leaves fall and the nights grow longer, we turn our attention to Samhain, a time of mystery and magic in the pagan wheel of the year. Tonight, I'm joined by my fellow witch and my partner in crime, Erin. Now, before people celebrated what we now know as Halloween, people celebrated the days from October 31st through November 2nd as Samhain. Samhain 2024 will be observed from the evening of Thursday, October 31st to the end of day on Friday, November 1st. Let's shed some light on this absolutely fascinating festival. First, we will talk about the significance of Samhain in pagan traditions. The word Samhain is a Gaelic word, and it translates to summer's end, or the end of the harvest. It is the thinning of the veil and a time for honoring our ancestors. Okay, picture this, Erin, if you will. It's Samhain, basically Celtic version of New Year's Eve, and it's a huge deal in places like Ireland, Scotland, and the Isle of Man. Think of Halloween's way older, cooler cousin, you know? Now, the Celts believed that on Samhain, the line between the living and the dead got kind of blurry. Like, spirits could just pop in for a visit, come hang out for dinner. They'd light these massive bonfires to keep the bad spirits away and use the flames to relight their fireplaces for the cold months ahead. Because basically what they would do is at the end of the night after the bonfire, they would each take an ember from the bonfire and go light their hearth fire with it. Cool, right? Then it was also the time of year to bring the cattle in from their, distant pastures, that's the word I'm looking for, from their distant pastures and have a huge, huge, huge feast with all of the food that wouldn't last through the winter. Kind of like what modern Christians do during Lent, Fat Tuesday. But here is the absolutely fucking awesome part. They believed that during Samhain, as I said, the ancestors would come back to visit. So they would set extra places at the dinner table and or leave out some treats to make them feel welcome. Talk about a massive family reunion. Sounds like fun. It was also, let's see, Samhain is a super cool reminder that life goes in cycles. And that even when things get dark, there's always something new coming around the corner. The sun will shine again. It's about remembering those who came before us, celebrating the good times, and looking ahead to what comes next. So, what are some traditional ways that pagans celebrated Samhain? Well, bonfires. Bonfires were one of the more popular ways to celebrate. In ancient Celtic times, tribes held 4 fire festivals a year, one for each equinox and one for each solstice. Fires were believed to have protective and cleansing powers. They also had dumb suppers, which is more your wheelhouse than mine. So tell us about dumb suppers.
Dumb supper essentially is the same as setting a place for dinner for any of the other living folk around you. Only this one is for the honored dead, our ancestors. It's a way of honoring them by inviting them to the table to have supper with the rest of us. It's just a place, it's just a way for us to reunite with our ancestors on the day where the veil is the thinnest. Period, end of statement. Now, the way that I prefer to celebrate it is by holding a dumb supper over in a cemetery or in a graveyard, specifically where my ancestors are buried. But because that's not necessarily available to me right now, I hold it wherever I am. That way, and light a candle. That way, the candle is kind of like a beacon, letting them see where I am and guiding them to where I am, so that they can have that dumb supper with me and then part in peace because it's the day the veil is the thinnest.
Yep.
Or another way that you could do the whole candle thing is it's lighting the way for the goddess to return on November 1st.
I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a personal experience with Samhain and ancestors of a sort. Um, my great uncle, my grandfather's brother, um, amazing man, followed my grandfather into the Navy, all of that jazz. He died on Halloween, which just, I know, right? And the following year, I was at my very first public ritual for Samhain. It was my first public Wiccan or pagan ritual. And when they called in the ancestors that night, I felt his presence. It was just so intense and so cool and so awesome and just wow. Um, and the fact that I felt him and not my grandfather was kind of amusing to me because I was always closer to Grandpa. But Uncle Kern had just recently, the year before, passed away. So that's kind of fun. And you saying that, the candle lights their way to you. That is
Mm-hmm.
a very, very traditional belief for candles. And I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I personally have a strong connection to the Hispanic tradition of the ofrenda, or the ancestral altar. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in my high school, if you weren't Russian, you were Mexican. And if you weren't either one of those, you were minority. So I spent, 4 years surrounded by Dia de la Muerte and the ofrenda, etc. So I personally love the idea of honoring the much loved deceased ancestors, like my grandfather and his brother. And this tradition has always really resonated with me. And then, that both of us are quite handy with tarot and other forms of divination. I absolutely love digging out my pendulums this time of year because they're much more responsive. Um, Now let's talk symbols of Samhain. We all know about
Mm-hmm.
jack-o'-lanterns.
Mm-hmm.
How many people know that pumpkins were not the original produce used to carve them?
Ooh, I know that one.
Well, yeah, of course you and I do. We're witches here. Hello. We're witches. Of
What can I
course
say?
we know that jack-o'-lanterns started with something other than pumpkins. They were
Mm-hmm.
first carved from turnips and potatoes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Sean
Now, can you
Astin.
tell me when they actually started using pumpkins?
Yes, that is actually in my notes here. The jack-o'-lantern comes from the story of Stingy Jack. He
Mm-hmm.
played tricks on the devil and, was just a general jerk. So when he died, God said, nope, you're not coming to heaven. And the devil said, hey, you can't come see me neither. So the devil sent him off with nothing but a piece of coal to light his happy little way. So Jack made a lantern carved from a turnip and put the burning coal into it, and was then cursed to walk the earth for the rest of eternity carrying his lantern. Thus, the tradition of carving scary faces into turnips and potatoes began as a way to scare off Stingy Jack and the other evil spirits. Then, when the Irish immigrated to the States, the custom transitioned from turnips and potatoes to pumpkins because pumpkins grew a whole lot better here.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of looks cool.
It
Then we
does.
have And then we have cauldrons. Cauldrons represent transformation, rebirth, and the womb of the goddess. And
Mm-hmm.
then we have the crone, who is what most people think of when they think of witches. Oh my gosh. We're going to start that part over again. Then we have the crone, what most people think of when they think of witches. She symbolizes the wise elder aspect of the goddess and is associated with introspection and endings.
Hmm.
I like that.
Hmm.
Um, how can modern pagans connect with the energy of Samhain in their own lives? What are your suggestions?
Honestly, for me, Samhain is an amazing time for any form of divination, fortune telling, pendulum tarot, numerology to tarot, or just simply numerology, period. Scrying is going to be far easier because you're peering, literally peering beyond the veil to
Yep.
figure anything out. Shamanic journeys are also far more spot on. Um, any form of spell work is going to have an interesting result.
Oh, yeah.
Especially Morgan.
Yes.
So
Um,
that's going to be fun.
Make sure you close all the loopholes in your spells and manifestations because, much like when you're making a wish with a genie, you
Hmm.
want to be very specific or else.
There's a reason why every single last parchment and paper that I use for sigil and incantation work has about, sorry, spell has about 3 to 4 sigil leaflets with incantations to them to help make sure that I'm making closing the loopholes before I even light a single candle.
Yep. Samhain may be an ancient Celtic festival, but it's still celebrated
Hmm.
today in ways that echo its roots. You know,
Hmm.
bonfires crackling under the autumn sky, feasts shared
Hmm.
with our loved ones, and rituals that honor the ancestors and the thinning veil. Um,
Hmm.
so modern pagans, one of my favorite ways to, honor Samhain, nature walk. I take the dogs out. We have 3 dogs. 2 of them that are big and,
Hmm.
need the exercise. So we go on our nature walks collecting leaves or taking pictures and or foraging for cool mushrooms and other native plants that are useful in spells. Storytelling. Who doesn't love to tell
Sounds a good
ghost
one.
stories around the fire?
Hmm.
Or another idea is sharing some stories from your family's history.
Hmm.
Um, Baking traditional foods like soul cakes, which are small cakes that are made to honor the dead, typically left as offerings or exchanged for prayers in a practice called souling. It's another Celtic
Hmm.
thing. Then it's the new year. What do we do at the beginning of, the new year or at the beginning of spring? We cleanse our homes. So,
Hmm.
give your house a good deep cleaning and then smoke cleanse with rosemary or cedar to clear out the old, stingy, stale energy and welcome in some new, fresh energy and welcome the new beginnings.
Hmm.
And then another practice that you and I are both very familiar with, meditation. Meditate on the past
Absolutely.
year and meditate on what's yet to come, being open and welcoming personal transformation.
I have no
Um,
idea what that's all about.
oh no, nothing at all. So, how do you and Lacey celebrate Samhain typically?
That's an interesting question. I would have to ask her because I'm not as familiar with her customs and practices.
Oh yeah, you guys
And
haven't had the opportunity to you
and
guys
I'm
haven't
fairly
really
sure
had an
you
opportunity to
understand why.
Yep,
All right. Um, if I were
that's
to
okay.
recall anything, if I were to recall anything at all, the dumb supper is a mutual practice. But other than that, I'm not too terribly sure. We constantly talk about our ancestors, our beloved honored dead. Um, So we constantly keep that going. Anything else? I'm just simply looking forward to it.
Halloween parties. Any excuse to dress up as a pirate is a good excuse in my book.
Ah, pirate? No. Fortune teller, well, a sexy fortune teller. Now that I can do.
Um, y'all can see Wonder Woman over my shoulder here. I did a Wonder Woman costume one year. They still
Mhm.
have my picture up at the Froyo place. um, my traditions, obviously, as I said, the ofrenda, doing
Mhm.
some pendulum work, and then because the veil is thin, I take advantage of it and I talk to my daddy. I talk to my
Mhm.
grandfather. I talk to our brother, my great grandmother, and some other very much loved late family members. I have something. I have it. Okay. Um, Lighting a candle or 10. And some years we have had our first fire in the wood stove for Samhain because it gets cold in the Pacific Northwest. Um, Special dinner. And when the kids were little, trick or treating, of course, because, who
Mhm.
doesn't want free candy? Um, ooh, I had intended to talk about the origins of trick or treating.
That's a fun
Oops.
story.
I'll add it to the blog.
What? Oh,
So,
that I.
so sewing isn't just Halloween's spooky ancestor, like so many people think. It really is the witchy New Year's Eve. It's our time to
Mhm.
reflect on the past year, honor those who have passed on, and set our intentions for the future, the coming year. Basically,
Mhm.
think of it as a magical reset button.
Mhm.
Imagine, if you will, gathering with your loved ones around a bonfire, sharing stories of the ones you've lost this year, performing rituals for protection and good fortune for the coming year. It's a really powerful blend of remembrance and renewal, celebrating the harvest's end while embracing the mysterious potential of the darker months ahead. Samhain reminds us that endings can also be beginnings. They're always beginnings. And that even in the depths of the coldest, darkest days of winter, there is always hope and magic waiting to be discovered. The sun is going to shine again.
Mhm.
So, my darling witchlings, we encourage you all to embrace the magic of Samhain. Honest. Darling witchlings, we encourage you all to go out and embrace the magic of Samhain, honor your ancestors, and reflect on the past year. And then set some intentions and make some plans for the coming year. So,
Mhm.
that is our podcast for this week. We survived. Yay! Thank you for joining me, Erin. I enjoy spending any time I get to with you, even if it does have to be on the other end of a video call. Not for much longer. Not for very much longer.
Well, there's news to be shared along those lines, and there's definitely a muggle of hopes and prayers going on over here because money is far too tight. It's getting to the point where I'm beginning to wonder whether or not all the plans have to be set back.
We'll figure it out. So,
We'll figure it out, absolutely. But it's getting that tight. I'm beginning to have several questions in every regard
I hear you.
because there's quite a bit shifting and changing, and I'm not sure the direction of some of that.
I hear you. So, my darling witchings, spread love, spread joy, spread kindness. because there is already enough hate and discontent in this world, especially this time of this year. I am going to be political for a moment and remind you all, please, for the love of all things holy, get your asses out and vote. Mail in those ballots. Go to the polling place. Just vote. Because truly, honestly, genuinely, our lives do depend on it this year. Just saying. Then tell your loved ones that you love them, including the furry ones. You never know when that last chance you're going to have is going to be. And with that, I will bid you all a fond farewell.